Hello everyone, Mr. Keogh here. As you can see, I'm here in my office with Pony the Macaroni, or Macaroni the Pony. What's his name? My Pony Macaroni, that's right. And all of my other weird things that I'm surrounded by. I even brought my mustache. Just kidding. Now, today we're going to be learning about a few things. Some of it might be old, and you're like, oh, I remember that. Some of it might go, ooh, that's a little hard. I'm not sure about that. Either way, I want you to do your best. Up here it says staff, clef, notes. So, most of you are like, oh yeah, notes. Yeah, we do notes all the time. TAs, TTs, we do rests. Then some of you are like, oh, the staff. Yeah, we write stuff on the staff all the time. 5 lines and 4 spaces. And then you see this fancy word clefs, and you're like, not sure what that means. But here's an example of one. This is a treble clef. And some of you might think, oh, that's like the music thing. Yeah, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Okay? So go ahead and turn to your second page, and let's dig in. All right, lesson 1, the staff. Go ahead and follow along with me. It says, before you learn to read, you learn the letters of the alphabet. Letters are the symbols that make up words, and we know that's true. Like if we combine D, O, and G, you get dog. We figured that out. And then it says, learning to read music is the same. Before you can read music, you must learn the symbols of music. Just as the letters of the alphabet can be combined to form words and sentences, the symbols of music can be combined to form music. When you have learned the symbols of music, you will see how they are combined to form music. The symbols of music are music. The symbols of music are music placed on or between or near a group of 5 lines and 4 spaces called a staff. A staff usually runs all the way across a page like this. So this thing right here, we've talked about this before, the staff. You've seen me read music off of it when I'm teaching you songs. I've asked you to take a look at notes and words on the staff to read. Now we're just going to do a little bit more work with it today. Let's go down a little bit. All right. It says the lines of a staff and the spaces between the lines are numbered like this. And we've talked about floors on a building, right? Like the bottom floor of a building is the first floor, and as you go up, the numbers get higher. Well, that's the same. First line, second, third, fourth, fifth. And then if we look at the spaces in between, it's the same way. And I can even get a little closer if you need me to. If I'm thinking about writing a note here, well, then I know that that's the first space because it's the bottom space, and then the second, and then the third, and then the fourth, and then we're good to go. All right? Let's go back just a little bit. Okay. Now, here's the first thing that you're going to do. This says, write an X on the correct line or in the correct space. They did the first one for you. So if I look at this first one, write an X on the third line. Is that what they did? Let me change this to something a little easier to see. There's the first line, second line, third line. Yes, they did. So they must have figured it out a little bit, right? So let's try the same thing for us. Write an X in the fourth space. So here's the first space, second, third, fourth. Now be careful with these X's when I see these. I want to make sure they're in the space or on the line. That says space, make sure it's in the space. Now this next one says write an X on the first line. Just like before, remember, first line, bottom line, okay? Next one says write an X in the second space. So where's the first space? Here's the first space. Oop, there's the second space. That's where I want my X to be, okay? Boop. And last but not least, this one says write an X on the third line. Ooh la la. Well, let's start on the bottom line. That's 1. Hopefully you can see my green. There's 2. And oh, yep, there's third right there. Wait, we already did that one, so they should look the same, right? Yes, they should. So draw an X on that third line. Now let's go down a little bit more and see what's going on here. Uh-oh, the opposite. So this time they're going to ask you the X is on which line or in which space. They did the first one already where they said, well, that's on a line. That X is, there's the first line, there's the second line. Ta-da, second line. This one, let's do this one together. This is on a what? A line or a space? Space would be correct. But which space? 1, 2, 3, 4. So together, let's write fourth space. Oops. All right. Do you want to try the next one on your own? Go ahead. I'll give you a couple seconds. All right. Hopefully you said it was the second space. And maybe you even noticed that I drew on mine. I figured out that it was on a space, so I went ahead and just wrote space in. And then I even just wrote the numbers in to help me figure out what it was. You don't have to if you don't need to, but if it helps, please do. All right, this next one is on a line. Is it the first line, the second line, the third, fourth, fifth? Well, hopefully you remember. You count from the bottom up. It is the first line. Go ahead and copy that over, would you? And the last one. Is it on a line or a space? I think it's on a line. Now let's count. 1, 2, 3. Third line. So let's go ahead and write that in. Third line. Ta-da! Okay, flip that page over. Let's do some more. All right, this is where you get to be a little fancy. I love the treble clef. T-R-E-B-L-E, treble, clef, C-L-E-F. Now here, it gives you a little definition. We'll see if it makes sense. Just as we read words and sentences from left to right, we read the symbols of music from left to right on a staff. So there's our staff, 5 lines, 4 spaces below. The first music symbol placed at the left of a staff is called a clef sign. This clef sign is called a treble clef. So there's more than one clef, but in this case, if you ever see one that looks like this, that is the treble clef, the treble symbol. And there's always going to be one on every line of music whenever you see a staff. Now I'm going to zoom in and just point out a couple things. Number 1, this is really fancy. It's a fancy drawing of a treble clef. I'm going to show you the easiest way real quick. I start off by drawing a really tall J, and I put a dot on the end of it. I start above the staff. Hopefully you see that. I started above the staff, and I went all the way below before I curled it. Now, if you remember your lines and spaces, this is going to make a lot of sense. I'm going to even label them here. Here's line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Watch what I do. I'm going to take this line starting up here, and I'm going to draw to the right until I get to the 4th line. And then I'm going to go down to the 1st line and up to the middle line, the 3rd line. So the order that I go in is 4, 1, 3. So I'm going to do it in one smooth motion. Watch me. So I come down to 4, down to 1, up to 3, and then I just do a little curl at the end. Now, sometimes it's easier to draw it faster. Like if I were to draw it over here and I were to do it pretty quickly, sometimes it works out pretty well. I just go 4, 1, 3. Not too bad. And I don't expect you to go that fast, but we're going to have some practice here in a little bit. So it shows you down there exactly what I showed you how to draw it. If that helps you, you can reference it. If not, we're going to draw them together. It says trace the first one. So if you want to, you can draw over it. I'll do it with you just to get a feel for it. Start up at the top. There we go. And then, not too bad. But if you remember the way that I drew it, I'm not going to say it's the best way, but it's the way that I was taught when I was learning music, was that I'm going to do a nice and straight, tall J. The one on the left's kind of curly. And then, like I said before, we go to the 4th line, to the 1st line, to the 3rd line. Bada boom. Doesn't look too bad. I'd like you to do 5 of those. I'm going to do them with you because I like to practice these. These are fun to draw. Just at your own speed, go ahead and draw 5 of them. Do your J. Maybe I'll do a different colored one. Do your J. And then here I go. Down to the 4th, down to the 1st, up to the 3rd, curl. How about a blue one? J. Ooh, kind of weird line there at the top. Down to the 4th, down to the 1st, up to the 3rd, and around. I'm going to do a green one next, I think. Where's my green color? There it is. J. Well, that line was a little straighter that time. Down to the fourth, down to the first, up to the third, around. How about a yellow one? J. Ooh, that's my best line so far. Down to the fourth, down to the first, up to the third, and around. And then I need one. Do I need one more? That's 5. Oh, nice. Nice. Hopefully yours look wonderful. I'm excited to take a look at them. Turn the page. This page isn't going to take us very long because these are way easier to draw. Here we're talking about the bass clef. So clef means cymbal. Bass is just a different word than treble. It does mean something different though. So maybe you've heard like you've got a stereo in your car, or maybe you have a sound bar attached to your TV and you turn the bass up. It amplifies the low notes, right? So bass is like low, and clef is cymbal. So this is like a low notes cymbal. And it looks like this. It's kind of neat looking. So what does it say about it? It says, another clef sign which can be placed at the beginning of the staff is called the bass clef. The bass clef looks like this. The bass clef is also known as the F clef. Now, I don't want to go into the history of music, but it used to be that when you would draw this on the staff, people used to just draw a cursive F, and eventually it got fancier and fancier and fancier until it ended up looking like this. But that's for another time, okay? Here we go. So it talks about drawing it down here, and we can actually just watch what they do. So they draw a dot on the 4th line, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. They do a little curl, almost like an ear. Doesn't it look a little bit like an ear? So they go up and around down to the 2nd line, and then they draw 2 dots around the line that they started on. So that 4th line is really important for this. So if I go down to where our practice is, we can trace this one so you can kind of see. I am going to label these lines for you just in case that helps. So here's line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so if we were to trace it, we'd start by drawing a dot on line 4. I go up to the 5, down to the 2. Up to the 5, down to the 2. And then I just draw dots on the above and below the 4th line, which is where I started. So let's do 5 of those. I'm going to start with a black one. Okay, dot on the 4th line. Up to 2. Ooh, I said that wrong. Up to 5, down to 2. The Funk Master just turned off in case you're wondering what that sound was. And then I do dot above, dot below. All right, nice. Okay, how about a red one? Dot on the 4th line. And you can go at your own speed, right? Up to 5, down to 2. Not as curvy as I wanted, but that's okay. Above the 4th line, below the 4th line. Okay, let's slide this over a little bit. Let's do how about a blue one next? I'm excited to see what your guys's looks like. 4th line, go up to 5, down to 2. Ooh, that's better. Above, below. Okay, green one next maybe? 4th line, up to 1, down to 2. Oops, let me make those bigger. Alrighty, then I have room for one more. Let's do a yellow one like before. I thought that was kind of cool looking. Dot on the 4th line, up to 5, down to 2. Ooh, I actually kind of like that one. All right, so I have 5 bass clefs. Bass clef. Okay, let's go to the next one. Notes, yay, notes, the building blocks of music. And depending on what grade you're in, we know a lot of these. 1st grade always starts with tas and TTs, right? Quarter note, 8th note. 2nd grade sees lots of half notes. Eventually they see a whole note. I try to get everybody in on the whole note. And then the older grades will see 16th notes, ticka-tickas, which we're not going to talk about on this page. Now, it tells us that, that notes tell us several things. One of it is how long it is to play or sing the sound. Some last for a long time, and some last for a short time. Of the 4 notes shown above, the whole note is the longest, and the 8th note is the shortest. It says that it's a little bit like math. So if I look down here, I think music math is easier than normal math, but we'll see. 1 whole note. You can break it into 2 half notes, or you can break it into 4 quarter notes, or you can bring it into 8 eighth notes. So you can take a whole note, break it in half. You can break those in half and break those in half. Now, if I were looking at a half note is just 2 quarter notes or 4 eighth notes, and a quarter note is 2 eighth notes. And all of this makes sense if I were to maybe do a little creative highlighting here. So 1 whole note, half of a whole note. A half note, half of a quarter note. A quarter note, half of an eighth note. Everything breaks down into something else. And maybe we might need to look at this chart down below. Maybe this could help us. Ooh, yes, I do kind of like this. Look at how it represents a whole note as the largest thing. But a half note is only half of that. And a quarter note is only half of that. And an eighth note is only half of that. So they're long, shortest. So if you remember, we counted this one. Ta. This one was ta. Ta. T. And a lot of us are used to saying T, 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 T. And we like to say our TTs in groups, T, T. Okay? But we're going to break them down probably today. Okay? This page is super important. Flip back to it anytime you need it. But in the meantime, let's go to the next page. The whole note. Now, I need you to know that when you draw a whole note, it does not have to look exactly like this. I have seen so many students, I don't even know if I can do it. They kind of do this. They'll draw an oval. They'll kind of do one of these, try to color in the sides, and it takes them about 15 seconds to draw one whole note. No. Look at what they did below. Even below, they gave you permission, just like me, to just simply draw a circle. If it can be kind of an oval, kind of squish it on the top and the bottom, then go for it. If not, a circle works. Do whatever you need to be successful. The most important thing is where you're going to put the whole note, okay? And we'll talk about that in a second. Now, take a look here. It says, let me get my highlighter. Trace the whole note shown below, then draw 5 whole notes to the right of what you traced. Well, I actually don't want you to trace that one. Why don't you actually trace this one? That would be the easiest one to trace, because then you can have an idea of what that actually feels like. And then when you're ready, down below, then I'd say that would be a good time to draw 5 more next to this one. So here we go. I'm going to draw my different colors again. So oval, 1, doesn't have to be fancy, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I know. Some of you are probably thinking, well, it just kind of looks like an O or a 0. That's true. Now, if you drew them on the staff, this is really cool. I like this. They drew a whole note on every line and space of the staff. And look, it alternates. So it goes line, space, line, space, line, space, line, space. Notice that none of these, oops, well, that was weird. Did you see that? That was cool. None of these whole notes touch more than what they're on. So I don't see any whole notes that touch like 3 lines or anything like that. They draw it small enough so that I can tell, yep, that's on a line, there's a line going through it. Or, yep, that's definitely in the space because I don't see any line going through it, right? So make sure when you are drawing these that you are as careful as you can. It says, when a whole note is in a space, it fills the space from top to bottom like this, which I just talked about. And when it's on a line, it's centered on the line, just like this, which we just talked about. So let's skip to the bottom and let's have some fun. It says, trace the first whole note below, then draw 5 more whole notes anywhere on the staff. Oh my goodness, you have the freedom to draw them wherever you want. So first I'm going to trace this one like it says. Yeah, don't have to spend a lot of time doing it. And now it's up to you. Draw 5 anywhere you want. It could be on a line like this. It could be on a space here. It could be on a line there. It could be on a space here. Or maybe you want to get fancy and do the top line. Ooh la la. Whatever you want. I'm going to let you draw 5 whole notes wherever you want. Get creative. And you know what? If you got done early and you want to draw more than 5, go for it. But make sure that they are nice and beautiful and they're not too big, and that everybody, if they saw it, would go, yep, that's on a line, or yep, that's definitely on a space, because that makes it easier to read. Okay? When you're done, flip the page. Now, at this point, you might be a whole note master, but I'm always going to point this out, that when you think of the whole note, and you can see that they spelled it for you, whole note, I like to think of 2 things. Number 1, whole note refers to like a whole candy bar, a whole pie, a whole dollar, right? It's all of it, right? It's the biggest note that we know. That's kind of what I like to think of when I hear the word whole, like the whole thing, okay? But buried into there is the shape, because look, it has the word whole in it, and a whole note kind of looks like a hole, maybe, if you can use your imagination, okay? Now, the reason I bring that up is because this page is going to ask you to identify where whole notes are, or maybe to draw it in certain places. So in the first part it says, circle all the whole notes in the staff below. They've mixed it up. There's more than just whole notes in here, but they only want you to circle the whole notes. I'm going to give you 10 seconds to circle all of them, and then I'll circle them. If you get done early, you can read the next directions below. All right, 10 seconds has gone by, and I'm going to circle the whole notes that I see. That looks like a hole, and that looks like a hole. If any of you happen to circle any of these half notes, maybe you thought to yourself, well, that's a whole note with a line. That's true. It looks like a whole note in the circle, the oval, but anytime they attach something to it, whether it's a line or they put a flag on it, that changes what it's called. So definitely only 2 whole notes. Now, if you went on to the next part, you saw that it says, draw a whole note on the line or in the space shown below. Let's go ahead and do that. We practiced this a few minutes ago. First it says, in the first space, that is space 1, so they drew it in there. Let's try the next one. On the 3rd line. 1, 2, 3. There's the 3rd line. Maybe you can watch me counting with my colors. This next one says in the 2nd space. I'm going to go, there's space 1, there's space 2, so that is where I want to draw it. I'm just counting from the bottom up every time. This next one says on the 5th line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, yeah, that's right. The 5th line is the top line. I guess I could have remembered that. Now, the next one says in the 4th space. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ta-da! 4th space. Hopefully yours matches mine. I'm going to back out just a little bit so you can see it. There we go. Now, the next one, we did this with X's a few pages ago. Do you remember that? It says, on which line or in which space have these whole notes been placed? So where is it? So let's do it. This first one says, let's see, that looks like a line. 1, 2, 3. So that would be 3rd line. I might have to make my pen a little skinnier. The next one, let's see, is that a line or a space? That appears to be a space. Which one though? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4th space. What about the next one? It's the first something. It's way at the bottom. First line. There you go. And what about this last one here? So it appears to be in a space. Which one? 1, 2, 3. The 3rd space. Beautiful. Okay, here we go. What's this last part said? Uh-oh. It says, where's my highlighter? Hello, where are you? There it is. Are these whole notes in the treble clef or the bass clef? Circle the correct answer. So I don't really care where these whole notes are. They can be in lines and spaces. Doesn't really matter. It says clef, symbol. This thing at the beginning. If you don't remember what we call this, you can always go back and take a look. But if you're pressed for time, I can just help you out by pointing out that this is the treble clef. The bass clef, if you remember, starts on a dot, curls around, 2 dots. Okay? Alrighty. Let's see what happens on the next page. Don't be afraid, but we are now going into the lightning round. Now that we've practiced drawing one note, this is going to be so, I'm not going to say the word easy, but I'm going to say it should be pretty fast to be able to add a line to a whole note. Because if I do that, I end up with the half note. Hopefully you can see at the bottom, I have a whole note. If I add a line to it, it just becomes a half note. And if you look at my chart here, I need 2 half notes to make 1 whole note. And that should make sense, because if I have a whole anything, and I break it into 2 pieces, equal pieces, I have 2 halves. So if I had half a dollar and half a dollar, and I put them together, I'd have a whole dollar. If I had half a candy bar and half a candy bar, and I put them together, I'd have a whole candy bar. And I love to think of the words to make sense. Now, here's where it gets interesting. I can have a half note point up. I can have a half note point down. And it kind of depends on where you write it on our 5-line staff. But first, let's point this out. If I have to write the stem pointing up, it needs to be on the right side pointing up. If I'm going to write it pointing down, though, it needs to be on the left side pointing down. And if I were to draw one of these, this would make sense. So I'm going to draw one right here. Watch what happens if I kind of just, oops, I need to kind of, there we go. So see how it kind of matches here is pointing up, but what if I were to take it and I were to turn it upside down, which I'm struggling with? Oh, see, it matches perfectly. So all that is, the reason we put it on the left side down or the right side up, it has to do with how we flip it, okay? So keep that in mind, that right side up, left side down. Now, let's go ahead and draw some of them on this page. I need 3 half notes pointing up. If you want to go ahead and trace it just to get a feel for it, please do. But what I'm looking for is circle, line going up, circle, line going up, or you could say oval, right? Because the half notes are technically ovals. Oval, line pointing up. Make sure that that line is on the right side. I'm going to draw a wrong one. Watch this in yellow. Circle, up. Ooh, please don't draw them on the left side. Thank you. Okay, now over here, let's do the opposite. Left side going down. Here we go. So trace it if you want to. Going down. Okay, here we go. Oval down on the left. Oval down on the left. Oops, I was going to change colors. Oval down on the left. And because I like to show you how weird this looks. Ooh, that looks so strange. Make sure that we never, ever, ever, ever see it down on the right, okay? Now, that's the half note. Let's go on to the next one. Wow, this quarter note looks pretty familiar. Looks kind of like a ta, or a half note, a ta, right? If I were to draw kind of one next to this one, ta, or half note. The only difference is they filled it in. And that's all you have to worry about on this page. Now, if you want to know, this is worth knowing, ta, 2 beats, my half note. A quarter note, a ta, is half of that. So I would need 2 quarter notes to make 1 half note. And kind of like money, if I have 2 quarters, they make up a 50-cent piece, which is a $half, right? So 2 quarters make a $half. Maybe that helps you in your brain. That's kind of the way that I think of it. Now, just like the half note, stems are the same. If I'm going to do a stem pointing up, it has to be on the right side pointing up. But if I'm going to do a pointing down, it has to be on the left side, okay? So let's skip all the way down to the bottom. We're not going to spend a lot of time reading this page. And let's do some drawing and tracing. So if I can fill that in, it goes up. And let's do a bunch. Well, not a bunch. Let's do 3. And you know what? I'm not going to make you, but I honestly think the best way to draw a ta, a quarter note, is to do the half note first and then fill it in. It's just a good habit to have. Half note first, then fill it in. And those are all on the right side. Now let's move over to the other side and let's do them pointing down. You can trace the first one. Make sure you fill it in. Boop. And then you can start drawing. Oval, line, fill it in. Oval, line, fill it in. Oval, line, fill it in. I'm going a little fast, so those aren't looking very good, but I'm really excited to see yours because I think they're going to look beautiful. Okay? Now, just like on the previous page, there is a little information at the bottom that tells you when they go up, when they go down. It's not for today, though. Okay? We're going to leave that alone. Let's go to the last page. Interesting. This eighth note, the T, right? Because two of them is a TT. One of them is a T. Looks sort of familiar, right? I've got a whole note on the bottom. I've got my line like my half note. It's filled in like my quarter note, but now I have this flag on the side. Interesting. Yeah, and like I was saying before, you guys remember this, our TT. That's when they're together. But if they're separate, just one of them, if I cut it in half, it looks like that. Okay. Now, math-wise, this is a little harder. I love music math, but you just kind of have to remember that you can make two notes become any one other thing. So a quarter note, a ta, half of that is a T, which means that a TT, TT, both of them together, is the same as one quarter note. That's not something I want to talk about a lot today. It tells you how to draw it down below, but come down here. I really want to talk about this with you. When I draw these, and maybe you can trace this with me, I do whole note, half note, quarter note, eighth note. That's the order in which I draw it. So try that with me, will you please? I'm going to do whole note. Now make it a half note. Make it a quarter note. Make it an eighth note. And yeah, flags can be as fancy as you want them to or not. I usually just do baby flags. Now let's do it two more times. Whole note, half note, quarter note, eighth note. That flag was a little longer. Do it again. Whole note, half note, quarter note, eighth note. Now they're starting to look pretty good. On the other side, we're going to draw them upside down. I do not regularly see eighth notes that look like this. I'm not sure why this particular publisher makes their eighth notes connect up top. I'm not going to ask you to. It just has to be a flag. If it does go up, that's fine. But I don't really see eighth notes that look like this. So I apologize. But let's go ahead and do some tracing. Whole note, half note, quarter note, eighth note. And you notice I kind of only drew part of a flag. Try it without tracing. Whole note, half note, quarter note, eighth note. Do two more. Whole note, down on the left, half note, fill it in, quarter note, flag, eighth note. One more time. Whole note, down on the left, half note, fill it in, quarter note, flag, eighth note. Bada boom! And those are the T's, the eighth notes. Very happy with how hard you guys are working. I am looking forward to seeing what these look like. They're going to be amazing. So I will take a look at these when they get turned in. If you want to draw more of them, please do if you have extra time. If you're running out of time, I hope you don't have to rush too much. But I appreciate your attention. I appreciate you working on this. And I am excited.